The Many Things Podcast.
Right. Welcome to the Many Things podcast, joined by our long-term guest, Andrew. You all right, mate?
Hello.
So for this episode, we're going to start by talking about organ trafficking, people that have their organs trafficked. So there's a story that just broke the news today, actually, in 23rd of March. It's about a senior Nigerian politician. He used to be deputy president of the Nigerian Senate, so he's got a very high up position in Nigerian politics. It is called Ike Ekwemadu. Now, he was found guilty in a UK court because what he wanted to do, or what he did do actually, he flew a 21-year-old Nigerian street trader, so quite a lower class person, to the UK and offered a doctor £80,000 to remove this man's kidney and to give this kidney to his daughter, who had to drop out of her university because she was studying in the UK and she had kidney failure. Now, they did this by pretending that the man was her cousin and a willing donor, whereas in reality, they were offering him £8,000, which doesn't seem like enough to sell an organ in the UK, but in Nigeria, £8,000 is worth an awful lot of money. Now, that story is shocking to me, I think, because I thought people's trafficking and organ smuggling is the sort of thing you see in third world countries, but apparently it's sort of prevalent all over the world. Which I just thought was a pretty cool story, really. Well, not cool, but you know what I mean?
And unheard of. Although I think like these things rarely break the news, but they happen quite often, or more often than we think. But not with like people of this level. I'd say it's more like organized crime, that gangs that do this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's a prominent former politician in Nigeria, deputy president of the Senate. If the Senate's anything like the political structure in the US or something, that's a seriously high role. So you've got the elites, people smuggling, trafficking people to sell organs, fair enough, it's for his daughter. But still, so the organ market is worth $1.5 billion a year, and they estimate some 12,000 illegal transplants happen every year, but they think that this is far underestimated. A little bit more context. So the most likely people to become victim of trafficking are refugees, particularly Syrian refugees of late. And they actually quite often offer up their own organs, but they just get in these desperate positions. They want us to try to support their families. So, for example, one case was a Pakistani who previously lived in Syria as a refugee, and then when the Syrian war broke out, they moved to Lebanon. And under the United Nations rules, if you're in the second country, you can't register as a refugee. So they had no means of accessing any sort of aid, like shelter or food from UN donations. So they decided to sell their kidney to try and provide for their family, and got in contact with one of these organ brokers. And then again, it's dollars this time, but $8,000 was the price they sold their organ for. So it's pretty dark stuff, and especially how some of the most vulnerable people in society, sort of migrants, refugees, are the ones getting exploited. I mean, we thought stockbrokers were bad, but you now get organ brokers.
I would have thought that this politician could have found someone like in their circle of influence that would be willing to donate an organ. But I think maybe they probably did it because they thought they'd probably get away with it, and maybe they'd gotten away with other things in the past. So they just took the chance.
For sure, because usually there's usually a pretty big waiting list in like the UK or the States for these organ donations, but it's whether family members would be willing to sacrifice one of their own kidneys. No, I agree. I mean, he had companies over in Nigeria. He had 80 employees as well. But I mean, at first, it is horrendous, especially the way he's preyed on someone that's just like a sort of street trader, really not a very wealthy person from Nigeria at all. But I mean, it didn't really detail the article how much that street trader was willing to do it, and how much it was just like he was coerced and forced into it. Because he is getting £8,000, and you can live with only one kidney. So I think it's quite nuanced when it comes to the morals and the dilemmas of the moral dilemma of this situation. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe they weren't told like the full story of what was going on, because in the article it said that the victim had little understanding of what was really going on. So well, that's what the article says. I don't know how accurate it is, but maybe they fed them a different story of why they were being like sent to England.
Yeah. It's like, I booked
And the
you a dentist
reward,
appointment. Huh? Why is he going down?
and they were going to reward, like it said, they were going to reward the donor with something, but it was something illegal.
I thought they were going to reward the donor with the £8,000. No.
I think that too, but maybe they had other things that they had
Maybe like a job.
promised them.
Promised them like a job in the UK or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it says just they were offered an illegal reward, which was the £8,000, but I don't know what else they were told.
Well, it's interesting because they said that the victim, this 21-year-old, he had fake documents that were trying to show that he was their cousin. So you've got to think these surgeons, they must sometimes unwillingly be harvesting organs for certain people in the UK under, because they've been given fake documentation and fake identification for these people. This can't be the first case. This is just the first time it's been sort of caught in recent times, and we've all been made aware of it,
Yeah, I think this is this kind of thing has gone on for a long time. It's kind of like how people used to get backstreet abortions, because you would have to, like, when you can't do something like legally, you just turn to criminals. But this is an extreme. I say like this is an extreme, more extreme than that.
Yeah, I think it is more extreme than that as well, to be honest. But I also read about, so basically years ago, so I was back in college, so maybe like 7 years ago, my friend John, he was telling me about the Chinese and how that the Chinese government are harvesting organs of the Chinese prisoners. And like, I just didn't believe him at the time. I couldn't find any sources on the news and stuff. So recently, though, this has come to light as well. So there was a study by the Australian National University whereby they examined thousands of medical papers from China and unveiled the nation's clandestine organ harvesting trade. So there was the lead researcher, Matthew Robertson, was a PhD researcher and co-author of the report. He said that in these cases, the removal of the heart during organ procurement must have been the proximate cause of the donor's death. Because these organs could only have been by prisoners, our findings would strongly suggest that the physicians in the People's Republic of China have participated in executions by organs removal. Now, they think that these surgeries were carried out on prisoners on death row, so who are awaiting death, as well as prisoners of conscience, people who are incarcerated for who they are or what they believe in. Oh, so maybe like political dissidents or something, right? But here's the really interesting thing. China have come out denying this, but these rumors have been going on for the last 30 years. So the Chinese government is saying they don't do this, yet waiting times for organ transplants in countries such as the UK and US are measured in years and months, whereas waiting times for organs in China are measured in weeks. So they have seriously short waiting times compared to us.
Yeah, and also I think like when kind of like what you were saying about the migrants, how they use migrants, like if it's because these people can be like undocumented or they can just go missing and not heard of, like they're easier to exploit. Whereas if you try to do that here, like with citizens, it would be a lot harder. And also, if there's less regulation, like in a lot of places against these things, whereas here it's like it's harder to do this kind of crime.
No, for sure. The fact that the refugees, or they may not have the right paperwork, so yeah, they're kind of ghosts. They're not really on the system officially.
Yeah, if they're undocumented, then you can't really prove that they've been their organs basically that you've killed them. Like no one can prove it.
Yeah, and they're much less likely to go to the authorities as well because they think, well, I'm illegal here. I could get
Well,
to,
yeah, that's the other thing.
you know,
Yeah.
depending on which country you're in, the way the authorities treat the people, migrants. But back to the Chinese thing, it's like this Australian medical report seems to they seem to believe that some of the doctors, some of the surgeons in these Chinese prisons are actually killing certain prisoners by removing like the hearts and the organs. So that was their method of execution, which is seriously dark.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, or if they were like experimenting on them. But I think, yeah, maybe they're just executing them and just saying that and just using their organs. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the way they execute them. I mean, we don't really know what goes on because China isn't like an open nation, so we only know like bits of information. So anything could be happening there.
Exactly. The data, you know, the data is what they choose to release, which may not be transparent at all. Like they're famous for the number of their executions, you know, the death penalty where they use it, you know, they're famous for sort of underreporting and not really giving the world very clear numbers on just how many of these prisoners are on death row and how many get killed as well. So there's that element of it as well. Yeah, it's pretty weird. But what do you think the morals though? If it's a scenario, there's this prisoner, this serial killer, you know, he's killed 15 people, you know, some children as well, like one of the nastiest. And these doctors want to harvest his organs.
Well, if they're on the death pen, what's their sentence? If they're on the death penalty, then
they've been given the death penalty.
Well, I don't know. There's no ethical way to kill someone, really. So, I don't know. There's no way you can't. If you kill them, it's automatically unethical.
For sure.
Well, that's what a lot of people would argue. There's no ethical death sentence. So, I don't know. I don't know what to do or what would happen.
Yeah, I think to harvest their organs is definitely wrong. It's cruel. It's inhumane. It makes you sort of know better than them. But what about the death penalty in general? Do you agree with it?
I mean, it doesn't really solve the root of the crime, but it can give people comfort knowing that that person no longer exists.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it really helps. Although it can help with overpopulation in prisons, but that's if you use the death penalty like really widely enough to like eradicate loads of prisoners. But I don't think it.
Yeah. That's unlikely.
I don't know if it really also, though, if you kill the wrong person, because a lot of people get sentenced wrongfully. So imagine then if you had the death penalty and you got killed wrongfully.
Yeah, that's true. But like, what would you rather do? Would you rather be wrongfully incarcerated for 30 years, or would you rather just die? I mean, I don't know.
I think if you had hope that you might get released, I think that's the thing. If you have hope, then you just want to stay.
Mm-hmm. And you get some of those like wrongful convictions and like justice charities, and they research. I remember when I was doing criminology, they came and gave us a talk, so asking for volunteers. So what they do is they review loads of different cases, And if they think these cases, certain cases, there's been a miscarriage of justice, and they can re-examine the case, go over it. And if they think they have enough evidence, I can't remember what the legislation is called, but there's an act that you can call upon, and you can actually get a retrial, and you can get them out of there. It's quite rare. Again, it is quite rare, but yeah. So if you're the justice minister, you wouldn't be bringing back the death penalty anytime soon.
I don't think so, and I think it's too. It's one of those issues that's too controversial. So if you were to bring it back, it would just cause too many problems. It would cause too much opposition, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Too controversial.
So you'd be thinking very much from a political sort of reasoning, and not a moralistic one as to why.
Well, and morally, I don't necessarily think it's. I don't think it's the worst moral crime, but I don't think it's a helpful tool in deterring crime.
No, I agree, because the sort of people that do justify the death penalty under law, they've committed such heinous crimes that they're not rational. These aren't rational thinking people anyway. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really so it's not going to deter them. Normal deterrence of law isn't going to work on them.
In America, the crime rate in places with the death penalty, I don't think is much lower or better than anywhere that doesn't have the death penalty. So I don't think it really works. To be honest, prison isn't a good deterrent these days because people commit crime anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you need like to target people people when they're like young and growing up, and will target certain areas that have issues rather than just throwing people in prison.
Yeah, well, for short sentences, if you're giving these people a 4 month sentence for some type of non-violent offence, that they lose their job. Everyone in society, rumors, he's been into prison, he's gone to prison. Their whole life gets completely turned upside down. And even for shorter sentences sometimes. So these like 1 or 2 months, and they come out, with no money. I think they get given £50 or however much they get given when they leave. And your life is just completely ruined. And so what is the point of these real short sentences? Would they not have just been better with a community order where they could have sort of productively added a little bit back to the economy? I guess I found it here. Guess how many states in the US still use the capital punishment?
I don't think many. Alone, 4?
27.
10. Oh, that's still less. Well, yeah.
So many.
Just over half. That's still not that many. Well, okay.
Well, it's a lot. It's more
than I thought. Yeah. I bet it's all the southern ones.
Yeah, it's a lot of southern states. Okay, so how many people were executed? So how many people do you think were executed in the United States in 2022?
Don't know, few thousand? Or is it like really low? I think maybe up to
18.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, I think they use it quite sparingly.
18 in 2022, 11 in 2021. They use lethal injection. So it says here on deathpenaltyinfo.org that 1,567 men and women have been executed in the United States since the 1970s. Although over the last 2 decades, it's been decreased considerably.
Yeah, maybe they're starting to move away from it.
Pretty tiny numbers, really.
I think it's really rare that they actually choose to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what determines them using it.
So have you ever watched Soft White Underbelly on YouTube?
I don't think so.
Well, it's this guy. He goes around America and just interviews people that are really from what are perceived to be, the darkest corners of society, pimps, prostitutes, heroin addicts, drug dealers. And this is always a black and white interview. It's always filmed in black and white. And he just interviews them. And it's really intimate, sort of dark interviews usually, but also fascinating. And I watched one recently where he interviewed a Texas prison officer, and his job was literally the executioner in this Texas prison for like 25 years or something. And that was fascinating. I mean, it was quite funny because the guy spoke, the prison executioner spoke, it was almost like he didn't really think about it. He was like, these people are done wrong, so they get what they deserve. There was not a lot of sort of introspect and reflection of what his actual role is, which I think is probably a good thing, because if he did have that, it'd drive you crazy if that was your job. But yeah.
Maybe he was desensitized or probably agreed with it strongly.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. A lot of people agree with it.
Yeah.
Also, I think the younger generation are less, because we've seen less of that, we're less likely to think it's normal, whereas older generations are more used to seeing these things or knowing about them. Well, it was more commonplace in their time, so for them it's less of a shock.
Yeah, well, the world was like darker and tougher and stuff back then, like it was just a worse place to be. Yeah, okay. So I Googled what crimes used to be punishable by death in the United Kingdom. Murder, understandable. Espionage, arson at the Royal Dockyards. Blimey. So if you set fire to where the royals were sort of getting all of their goods in the dockyards, you could be killed for that. Wow. That is pretty shocking, actually. I always thought stuff like, stealing a loaf of bread or something, but I don't know. I couldn't find it there. Nice, cheerful topics we're talking about today.
Well, it's an ongoing debate, but I feel like I don't think we'll ever go back to the death penalty in this country.
No.
We might, but I don't think we will.
I don't think so either. It's really not in the sphere of.
It won't win votes. That's for sure.
No, it won't win votes. What else did you want to talk about? This TikTok thing or politics?
And the TikTok thing.
Well,
so basically today, the TikTok chief was being questioned by Congress because they feel they're worried about data concerns. But so they're worried that the FBI and the Federal Communications Commissions have warned that ByteDance, which is basically the company that the Chinese parent company of TikTok, they were worried that they could share user data such as browsing history, location, and biometric identifiers with China's government. And in 2017, China implemented a law which basically gave the government any personal data relevant to the country's national security. But there's no evidence that TikTok has turned over such data. But there's fears around the fact that TikTok has so much data, similar to like other social media as well.
Yeah.
But, so basically they're worried about the data and its implications for security.
I mean, it's understandable because the sphere of influence their government has over there is really difficult to comprehend if you're not from there, or you live in a Western society. Even though people may not think we're that free here, we really are quite free compared to them. Like my friend, I think I've spoken about her before, but she was at the University of Bristol, and she was genuinely shocked how one time we were down the pub, and I was sort of slating a little bit, criticizing I think it was, I can't remember who was in power at the time now. It might have been Boris Johnson, but I was just speaking negatively about him openly. And she was saying, if you're in China, you could never do that in a pub or a public place, speak badly about the leader, because you just don't know who's listening. There's this just enormous sense of paranoia over there. But it's kind of well reasoned, because they can, like that law you said, they can just lean on companies and say, look, we need your data for national security reasons, and they just can't question it.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, some people said that this thing against TikTok isn't really that different. It's not really that different to what Facebook and Instagram are doing, like with people's data, and they kind of thought that it's similar to when Mark Zuckerberg was basically questioned, because they do all kind of gather the same data. I think they're just really scared of like the links to China. That's the main thing that's worrying them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
and also I think in the Chinese version of TikTok is apparently smart. Like, apparently the algorithms that encourage smarter behavior than the Western version, that just encourages challenging and silly trends.
Yeah, the Western version.
That's what I heard. That it's actually very different. The version they give young people there is very different.
Well, they have the time limits over there for young people. Chinese version of TikTok. I think has it been implemented over here now as well?
I'm not sure.
Wait, I think it has, where young people can only use it for 2 hours a day or something. 1st of March. TikTok users aged under 18 will have to enter a passcode to use the app for longer than 60 minutes. Right, so it's kind of like a parent feature where they can get the passcode, but so they are trying to restrict the use, which I think is a good thing. Really.
Yeah, I think it's probably it is a good thing, because people get too absorbed in their phones.
Yeah, so
at the end of the day, like with adults or older people that have downloaded TikTok, they're consenting. Like, no one actually reads the terms and conditions, but it probably says in the terms and conditions that they can use their data, but no one actually reads it.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of like Apple's terms and conditions.
I'm trying to think when I ever read terms and conditions, apart from for like a job contract. Yeah, no one really does, do they? It's like a couple of pages long, but it's basically, I guess we can't complain if we sign our data off. We sign it, we sign our rights off for them to use it this way. Yeah.
But this thing in the article, it says that TikTok was first targeted formally by the Trump administration in 2020 with an executive order prohibiting US companies from doing business with ByteDance, which is the parent company. But Biden revoked that order in June 2021.
He revoked it? That's interesting.
Yes, but it says he revoked it under the stipulation that the US Committee on Foreign Investment conduct a review of the company. When the review stalled, Biden demanded that TikTok must sell its Chinese-owned shares or face a ban in the US. Okay. They actually are thinking of banning it, but I don't know if this will.
Well, I know in the US it's banned by government employees aren't allowed to use it. Security fears. Yeah, so I mean, if they've started, so yeah, maybe it's going to ruin 100 million 14-year-old girls' lives in America if you get the total ban. Someone else will come up with something else, though. Bound to.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, on that note, we shall draw the podcast to a close, I think.
Yep. Goodbye.
Yeah, cheers, mate. See you later.
The Many Things Podcast.